All right, Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic. Welcome to Monday's morning or evening Big Book Compendium, depending where you're at. I'm going to tell a quick story about St. Francis. So there's a story of St. Francis, and he's out there and he's plowing a field one day, and a little boy walks by St. Francis, and he looks at St. Francis and he goes, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Well, I'm plowing the field." And he goes, "Plowing the field for what?" "A garden." And he goes, "Oh," and the little boy goes on his way. The next day, St. Francis is plowing it again. And the little boy goes to St. Francis, "Can I help you, St. Francis? Can I help you?" And he goes, "Yes." He goes, "You can help me." He goes, "I'll follow behind me with these seeds and leave the seeds to the garden, to the trench that I'm digging." So St. Francis does that. And as they're going through, and this garden starts to grow, and the boy doesn't walk by there every day. He walks by about every 3 days, and eventually he walks by and there's a big giant garden, and he goes, "St. Francis," he goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm watering the garden. It's going to grow bigger." And the little boy goes, "Wow." He comes back again a few days later and the garden's huge. And he goes, "Man, St. Francis," he goes, "I can't believe this garden is so huge. It's amazing." And he goes, "What do we do now?" And he goes, "Grab the garden clippers and grab a rake." He said, "Now we must maintain the garden so it can truly grow." And that's the essence of what we're looking at today. How can we truly grow? And, we're not talking about, what we're talking about is the amazing growth of our spiritual experience. This is the incubation period. When you first start doing 10, you're just starting to get into it. You don't really know what's happening with you. And you're on fire. You're looking at this program through the eyes of wholeness rather than fear, rather than doubt. And here's a good way to look at it. I mean, we can get blocked really easy. And what would happen if the sun was to become blocked, obstructed by something? The world would slowly go dark and die. In the same fashion, the same thing happens to us when our spirit gets obstructed. We slowly fall into this darkness of insanity and death. It's, because some people say that's it, and they say no, those things have tons of crumbs that fall out, like self-pity and stuff. But those 5 block us from God within, leading to this illusion that God is not with us, that we're separated from God. And that creates, things: pride, high or low self-esteem, personal relations, material security, emotional security, sex, all that stuff. The book calls that blockage the inability to connect to the spirit within us. We also call that the spiritual malady. Now, Carl Jung recognized the aspect of, people being blocked by stuff, and a spiritual experience was absolutely necessary. And it would end that malady. What Bill Wilson did, divinely guided, I believe, created a simple spiritual principle to remove that malady of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and put you in a place you never dreamed of before. And once that obstruction is removed, and that conversion does take place, that's also the awakening experience, where we experience consciousness of that spirit within, which means awareness of that spirit within. I know it's there. It's not even a question. And that leads us to take on the characteristics of that spirit. And we call that oneness with God, or wholeness, or the results as wholeness. We call it oneness with God. But what does that do? It restores us to sanity, removes the obsession. Now the funds part's over. Now I got to maintain that and keep it going. If remember you were a kid, you put your bicycle upside down, you spin the tire. It didn't spin forever. Eventually the tire would stop going after a few minutes. How did you get to keep going? You got to keep pushing it, keep pushing it, keep pushing it. That's what the steps do. to keep it going. Bill came up with step 10, so we could have continuous maintenance and growth and maintain that wholeness. With step 10, every moment is an opportunity to learn more about ourselves, every moment. And the key to maintaining that spiritual growth is to continue to be rigorously honest, complete honesty, the exact same way we did in step 4 originally. I don't want to make this step confusing with a learning curve. When I take someone through the steps, I don't like to make it confusing with a learning curve, how to do some other type of inventory. I want to go the smoothest transition possible into step 10. And the smoothest is the same inventory that we did, but a little bit more awareness is involved on the mentee's, place. So we continue to do personal inventory. And I said last week, I don't know how people can get past the word continue. It says that, and personal inventory is what we call inventory in this book. When it says, there's other, it only mentions moral inventory twice in this book when it's written, and it's, I believe, in the forward. It might be later on in the book, maybe once, but personal inventory is in there all over the place. And he says, now we start personal inventory in 4, continue personal inventory. That tells me if he wanted to be different, he would have had a whole page in this book of a new inventory. So in essence, step 10 is an abbreviated version of 429, but done minute to minute, or you could say daily. So we're developing a new discipline on a daily basis by, we got prayer, meditation, but also inventorying our thoughts and behaviors, so we can take corrective action as soon as possible. Not if they crop up, when they crop up. So we will continue to be self-centered, and the book provides very specific instructions on how to get rid of ourselves, of our self-centered behaviors. And it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's the key. So if that works, it will always work. It will always work. And we must continue to take that action. I'm going to read a little bit out of the 12 and 12 on page 90. And this is a very powerful word. I want you to really listen to what it's got to say. It's one sentence. It is a spiritual axiom that every time we are disturbed, no matter what the cause, there's something wrong with us. I never truly understood that until I started doing continuous inventory. I saw it in my 5th step in the last column that, my mistake. There's something wrong with me here. I started to get it, but I truly didn't understand it and grasp why it was happening. It was the instinct showed me that drove me to that place. But I saw in step 4, I was to blame for my resentments and my fears, but through continuous, I started to grasp it. I wrote down the littlest things to the biggest things. A guy cut me off down the road, I wrote it down. Someone owed me money, cut it down. My neighbor looked at me wrong, I wrote it down. He moved my garbage can, I wrote it down. Only when it really disturbed me. But then when the big things started to happen, like almost losing my house and injuries and stuff like that, I knew I knew it. I didn't wait until the roof to cave in. Because I started to see every time I was disturbed, there was something wrong with me on the simplest ones, so I could see that eventually on the biggest ones. I realized the only thing that could possibly be wrong with anyone in this entire universe is my thinking. My thinking. It's always my thinking. How I perceive it, how I look at it. We could look, Manuel and I could look at the same painting and he might see it differently than I do. We all have different thinking, but you can't make me mad. Only I can make myself mad. And when it goes beyond me making where I get mad and I don't, I'm not aware of it, it controls me. When I become aware of it and it starts getting anger, that's the part we're trying to look at here. And step 10 lays the foundation for spiritual living for a lifetime. That's what it told us in the book. We continue this for a lifetime. So a big problem with people, you know, have this awakening and they only do inventory, when shit piles up on them. They wait until the roof caves in, or there's so much fear, it's left and right and behind them, and we call that frightened, and you're in that state of anxiety. We need to do these things when they crop up, write them down, and that's the way it goes. I mean, there's no other way around it, so we can see what's going on. Step 10 is not something we dust off when things, when the worst thing happens. Let's see what the book says. So we're going to go to page 85. So page 85, it is easy for us to let up on a spiritual program of action. That's what we're doing, a spiritual program of action, not a spiritual, focus or acting spiritual program of action, and rest on us. So it's easy to let up on that program. I'll be the first one to admit it, and rest on our laurels. So let's go over the origins of that phrase, rest on our laurels. It comes from the ancient Greece. In the original Olympic Games, they were weekly. It was a big deal. And, the victor was always given not a gold medal, but the laurel wreath around their head. And it's had a symbol behind it. What that meant was the guy who won, or whoever won, could not rest on their laurels. If he wanted to remain number one, champion, he must work even harder to have continuous victories, continue to be champion. So same thing here in 10. We must work even harder to maintain this. This is, it says 6 and 7 and 12 and 12 is what separates the men from the boys. I believe it's step 10, because most people won't do it. But to rest on our laurels means be satisfied with a degree of success. And the problem is we've had success in our life, but we measure it so high. And I want my spiritualness to be like that. And I don't look at the little things. Bill used the term rest on laurels because he witnessed members having a spiritual conversion as a result of these steps, and then rest in their achievement. He saw them doing nothing to maintain and grow where he was doing it, and he kind of went, huh. So when he wrote these steps, he was very straightforward. So these guys had a spiritual awakening and thought, you know what, this will be everlasting. Is your stomach, your stomach say full, is it everlasting when you eat food? No. If this can give you a big jump in the spiritual realm when you do 49 the first time, what's it going to do if you do it once a week, every day, even if you did it once a week? And Bill, he wanted this thing says, all went well for a time, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. All's going good, but he failed to enlarge it. To his condemnation, he found himself drunk half a dozen rapid succession. That's what happens. Rapid succession. That's what real alcoholics do. Not someone that just has a little drinking, problem, or a little bit, does drugs once in a while. No, we get drunk in half a dozen times in rapid succession. So step 10 was created so people could, this thing and then grow it more and more. There's step 10 is, I always use the example of a building with stairs getting higher and higher to the top, right? When you start the steps from so many, you keep growing in there. And then 11's wrapped in with it. So is 12. We need to have daily freedom. That's what it's about. And most important, the awakening, should never leave and should never fade away. If my awakening feels like it's fading away, and it has at times, I go back and I look at the last 30 days or so. Maybe there's something there. Matter of fact, you should go back every couple of weeks and look at the last 30 days, not just stay so focused on the week. You know, you hear people in the fellowship, you know, they tell this term to newcomers, stay plugged in. And that what that means is stay plugged into the winners, you know, stick with the winners, come to these meetings. But that term started in the 50s in AA, and it came from Cleveland. And what it meant was stay plugged into step 10, stay plugged into the spirit. And of course, like every great saying in AA, that eventually gets watered down. You know, I mean, step 10 is our insulin. And what happens if a diabetic doesn't have insulin? We know what happens. Someone might be diabetic in here and can tell us. But, you know, back to the book. Look what it says here. We are headed for trouble, for alcohol is a subtle foe. I don't know if alcohol is really a subtle foe. I think it's pretty naive, but anyways, but we are not cured. We're not cured because we have the allergy. And people always want to say, you're not recovered. You know, if you say recovered, you mean cured. No, it's two different things. Recovered means to have a hold of my spiritualness, not my alcoholism. And that's a byproduct of it. This, you know, recovered is my spiritual part of me that I'm holding on to, right? If being recovered meant I have a hold of my drinking thing, that would be insane. We're not cured, but the obsession's gone. It's arrested because of where I'm at, my spiritualness. Because what we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance and growth of our spiritual condition. This is a big one right here. Reprieve means relief, right? We got that before. What was our daily relief before? Getting high, right? That was our daily relief. But it says contingent means dependent upon. So what they're saying here is what we have is daily relief, which is step 11, that's dependent on the maintenance and growth of my spiritual condition, 10. What they're saying here, 11 is dependent on 10. I got to move stuff out of the way to see the light on a continuous basis, because I can build up walls really quick. And I don't want those walls anymore. This is not about building walls anymore. It's about knocking them down. That's what we're looking at 10 here. You know, continuous growth, connect to 11, have that clarity. You know, so it's almost like 11 is almost like a barometer itself. It's going to tell me where I'm at, right? It's going to tell me where I'm at. And that's the amazing part. So if I had a daily reprieve of getting loaded, I should have a daily reprieve of something different, especially with these steps. Page 98, 12 and 12 is going to talk a little bit about how 10 and 11 work together. It says there's direct linkage among self-examination, that's inventory, meditation, and prayer. So he's saying there's a connection between meditation, or prayer, meditation, and inventory. Taking separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit. And most people make the mistake of doing that. But when they are logically elated and interwoven, smashed together, molded together, right? The result is an unshakable foundation for life. Do you have that unshakable foundation for life? If you don't, you need to work those two together. And what that means is next week, we're going to look at like the nightly review. Well, my 10 steps should be right there next to me, right? At all times, interwoven together, because my connection to God wouldn't be here if I didn't do 4 through 9 before. So to maintain my connection to God, I need to do 4 through 9 now as well. So when step 10, you know, here's the thing is, when I get dumbfounded, I shouldn't say dumbfounded, but I get lost, let's just say, when they start describing step 10 in meetings, because it's like, or whatever groups, it's almost like a psychological exercise rather than spiritual growth, where they do it because I felt bad, so I better feel good. You know, feel bad, write it down, feel good again. Write it down, you know, feel bad, write it down, feel good again. You know, that's not the program. It's not feel bad, feel good. You know, it's not what it's about. We did that when we got drunk. You know, feel bad, feel good. We're not trying to do that. Step 10 is not a feel good step. It feels good, but it's not that feel good step in psychology aspect. If you're only doing step 10 to feel better, then that's just behavior modification. And that's just reinforcing a type of behavior in order to extinguish an undesired behavior, decrease or increase a particular type of behavior. That, you know, if you do that, go for it, but don't call it this program. That's something different. That's something way different. You know, something way different. And that's the thing. You know, my room in here has blinds up on the wall. When those blinds are closed, that's like the walls that I build, right? That represents the walls, the resentments, the fears, the guilt, the frustrations. That's what those things mean. When I open my blinds, it's equivalent to doing step 10 and knocking down those walls. Well, I see the light and I don't go, oh, there's God, and walk away. No, I do what I'm supposed to do. If you're doing step 10, you got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to do. And you also have turn your thoughts towards someone you can help. If I'm doing step 10 only to get past stuff, what are you doing for the light? And it's not just helping people. It's practicing the principles in all your affairs, everywhere you go, right? So let's go back to the book. Now here's another time frame. Every day. They're telling us it's daily, right? Every day is a day we must carry God's vision into all our activities. How do I do that? By knocking down those walls, right? Can I carry God's vision into my activities if I have a resentment? Or if I gotta wait for my friend or brother to get home so I can tell him he's wrong? That's not what we're doing here. Every day is a day we must carry God's vision into all our activities, not some, not a few, all. Now look at this. It says God's willpower. How can I best serve thee? Not thy will, not mine be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line as proper use of the will. You know, praying only for the knowledge of will for us and the power to carry that out. Ask yourself, do you understand what that means? Praying only for the knowledge of his will. That's a question of the day I want you to answer yourself. Do you know that question? Can you answer? You know, praying only for knowledge of his will. Do you do that? And if you don't, maybe the answer is in 10. But it says, these are thoughts which must go with us constantly, all the time. It is proper use of the will. Page 85. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who has all knowledge and power. If you have carefully followed directions, there's a condition right there. If you follow directions, not your directions, the book's directions, we begin to sense this flow of his spirit into us. Wow, we become aware of the spirit of God in us. To some extent, we become God conscious. Once again, he's telling us that our lives have been changed here, right? To some extent, he said, now he's saying, remember he said in step 5, you may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now you begin to have a spiritual experience. Now he's saying, we begin to sense the flow of his spirit into us. We're now God consciousness. It's a ladder. We're moving up that ladder a little bit more awareness. But he's telling us we've changed. We've had a spiritual awakening. We become God conscious and now receiving strength, inspiration, guidance, and direction from that spirit as well. It says, look at this. We've begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further. And that means what? Go to meetings? Call my sponsor and cry or be frustrated? No, let's go further. And that means more action, more action. So let's talk about this sixth sense. So we live in a three-dimensional world, right? That three-dimensional world is observed through 5 senses: hearing, taste, touch, smell, sight, right? Most people will never know anything outside of those 5 senses. But here's the question. It's a very important question. Is your sight, your eyes, always correct? Is your hearing always perfect? Is your sense of smell always right on? Like, I mean, every time you smell a smell, you know exactly what it is. Have your taste buds ever fooled you? You know, have you touched something and thought it was one thing and, oh, wait, that's not what it is? But there's a sense that never lets us down. It never fools us, and it's never wrong. And that sixth sense is God consciousness, right? It's perfect. So the God consciousness is that awareness. That's what consciousness means, the awareness of God within. And when I'm living and swimming in that pool of God consciousness, I've exceeded my animal instincts. I'm not living with my animal instincts anymore, meaning we're not guided, we cannot be anymore guided by instincts, because either one or the other God, but we're not driven by, we're driven by God rather than instincts, rather than, God rather than pride, God rather than high self-esteem. So this, gives us the ability to start all of a sudden making sane, rational decisions. And ask yourself, have I made insane decisions today? Well, you got to do 10. But what that means is it's God consciousness, the capacity to surpass, knock down any walls, anything that's bothering me, hurting you, maybe even killing you. But you feel the strength to take on whatever life hands you. And no matter how bad things seem to be, you know it's going to be good, right? But it gives us the power and ability to understand and know what's happening around us. So I'm going to put up the screen up here. And this is going to go kind of fast paced, big surprise, right? But this is something that I learned a long time ago. And it's something that if you can bring this and understand it to a person, everything makes sense. So we have three physical dimensions: height, length, width. And then we have three dimensions of time: past, present, future. Three dimensions, three mental dimensions: thought, perception, and feelings. And then we have the three dimensions of life, right? Now, the beginning of it's up here. The center of this is self-will. Our instincts is the center of it, right? Because that's what we're following, not God. Otherwise, God would be the center. But there's also our mental and emotions. And then there's the physical world. So self-will, instincts flow out to the mental emotions, and the mental emotions go out to the physical world. So the center, as you see, is our misdirected instincts. And what happens with this is when people agree with us, and of course are following our demands and our directions, or whatever you want to call it, to be right, bossy, our instincts are in harmony with others, because we think this is the way it's supposed to be. So what happens? We're kind, we are considerate, patient, and generous. Even, as the book says, modest and self-sacrificing. Our mental emotions are clear. You can see they're clear. There's nothing in there, right? And that also happens when we're loaded too. But what if our instincts are not in harmony with others and affects our emotions? Well, look at that. Take that in for a second and just look at that, right? When our instincts are run riot, self-will run riot, we are not in harmony with the world. We're mean, we're egotistical, we're selfish, we're dishonest. We collide with others through harms, through resentment, fear. Call it self-destruction. Call it the spiritual malady. Can I even think with all that stuff in there? Look at those thoughts. That's what it looks like when we live on instincts rather than God. And notice that the first two rings say inward, self-will is inward, inside of me. Now, life's okay as long as I don't bring this to the outside world. We're pretty good at that. So we take this thinking outward and reactions to the physical world. Well, here's what the physical world looks like, right? So in the physical world, we have family. We know that. We have children, some of us, or nieces and nephews or whatever. We have sex. We have laws. We have jobs. We have shelter. We have material things we love to try to make us happy with. We have church, education, coworkers, car, money, others, friends, significant others. There's a bunch of others we could throw in there. We could say church could be the ashram or mosque or whatever it is, right? You would throw rehab in there, whatever it is. But here's the thing is, I'm going to take this thinking in the center, and with a mind that's anger, fear, selfish, restless, irreligious, content, jealousy, misery, self-pity is my thinking. And I'm going to go out to here. And if I get these things, if I get the right family, if I get sex, if I don't get in trouble. But the truth is, when we live on instincts and our mental and emotions, we go out and destroy everything. We lose our family. We lose our children. Sex becomes more of for pleasing myself. Laws get us in trouble. We lose our jobs. We have to find places to live. Material things become more present. I don't go to any type of spiritual place, meetings or anything. Education, I'm not going to do that. I don't have coworkers. I live out of my car. I find other ways to make money. I hustle, steal, cheat. I push others out of my life, push friends in my life. My significant other has locked the door. That's what that looks like. This is the world we live in. But all this, we're stone cold away from a drink. We're super close to a drink in this aspect. Even more important, when we drink, the mental emotions calm down temporarily, but then it comes right temporarily. So let's just take a look at that for a second. That's the life we lived. That's what we're trying to get away from within these steps. So what's going to happen? We're going to start doing the steps. We're going to go to a meeting, raise our hand and meet somebody, or maybe in a rehab and get a phone number. And I'm going to sit down and start doing these steps. And the guys could explain to me 1, 2, and 3, right? And when we do a genuine third step and I follow up with action, it's no longer instincts in there. It's still kind of, but I'm moving away from it. And that action, look what that action does. You see the difference? See that ring? It's gone. I got to knock down that ring to get into my thinking. But you notice that a lot of my thinking is gone. Look at the difference. Anger goes away, selfishness goes away, but what's left is fear, rids, depression, some obsession, some self-pity, some guilt. The stuff from harming people out here. You get what I'm saying? So I got to go out and do 8 and 9 in the physical world. And I make amends to my family. I make amends to my children. I make amends for the sex misconduct. Maybe I make amends to the police, to my old jobs, to the places that, the shelter, whatever, all this stuff on here. But notice the physical world, to go out there, I got to knock down that wall. I got to knock down that ring. So we live in before we lived in this box. That's a small box to live in. The steps knock it down. Look at that. Boom, boom, boom. What else could do that? And when you fix, and all this stuff we destroyed is repaired, notice all that's gone. Everything's gone. All this extra stuff, the guilt and everything's gone, but everything in there, because I'm not looking at stuff in the physical world anymore to fulfill anything. This stuff's there anyways. Look what happens. Look what happens. I'm left with God. How do you get rid of this? There's one more ring out there that's going to take us to a different level. 10, 11, 12. 10, 11, 12. Which is the fourth dimension of existence. Right there. This is the program that's in this book. What it says here, this is that program. Only the steps can bring you to the fourth dimension of existence as fast as anything else. And if not, if they can you get to a level of 10, 11, 12 where you can repeat it over again? I mean, the things that brought you joy in life, and you try to repeat, how many times you try to repeat it and it didn't work? Steps will work, right? The steps will work. Is there anyone that does not want this? Let's take it one step further. Let's look at it this way. Unity, service, recovery, unity with God, service with my fellow man, recovery. Does that look that difficult? And I get the wholeness right here. And the triangle is my foundation, which is God. And it's one. Why is it strong again? Remember, one foundation built on a foundation. That's what a pyramid is, built on a foundation. You cannot knock a pyramid down. That's the triangle. Here's the problem with recovery. People believe there's like these two houses. One house is the my thinking house. That would be, let's go back to that my thinking house. This my thinking house. And the other one they believe is the fourth dimension house. Right? So there's two houses, the my thinking house and the fourth dimension house. And people think that when things go bad, when the shit hits the fan, I must leave my thinking house and go back to go into the fourth dimension house and chill for a while until I can go back to my thinking house again, and until things go bad again. And that's why people call it a pink cloud, because it's only temporarily. That's why I say it goes away. There's only one house in recovery, and it's this house, the fourth dimension house. We do 10, 11 to have peace in endless pink cloud. Endless. We call living in the fourth dimension of existence. This book says common sense will become uncommon sense. Uncommon sense, it says. Think about that. It says, because your common sense is no longer common with everybody else. You have a different perspective on life. People look at you different and see you different. A 5 sense person is not going to understand a 6 sense person. A 5 sense person, it's the caterpillar, the butterfly speaking butterfly language to a caterpillar. But discover the intuition that's here in this God consciousness, and you can see, feel, and touch with your spiritual senses. So that inner resources, it's infinite possibilities. So let this guide you where you need to be. And if you do that, you'll go to spiritual roads that you're not accustomed to. I don't care how many years you got sober. Let it take you, to those that you need, those you can help, right? That's what we're talking about here. That's what we're talking about. Page 85. Look what it says. We begin to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further and more action. So he's asking for more action. More action. Oh, I got to go back and put this back up again. Hold on. Oops, it didn't work right. Of course. Sorry about that. Should have just left it up. So this is going to bring us to step 11. This is going to be kind of we're not going to get into step 11 today. We're going to get into the workings of step 11 a little bit. So sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. Unfortunately, most people only see that part. There's a whole other part. So this is the longest step there is. As we understood him, what does that mean to you? You understand it. Praying only for knowledge of his will for us the power to carry that out. What does that mean to you? Are you doing that? Describe, write it down what it means. So, I mean, all these are stuff you need to understand. Sought. So it says sought. That means we're keep looking. This is a seeking program. We're looking for something. Remember, we are seeking to have God, to conscious contact with God. We're always going for it. If I'm conscious of something, I gain a deeper understanding, period. If I have conscious contact with God, I'm always going to have a new understanding and grow. And it says, meditate, prayer to communicate with the spirit within, to God, for guidance, and ask guidance. God give. You're waiting for the answers. And why are we doing that? We're trying to improve, to make it better. I have contact with God, but it's hard to just have conscious contact with God. If I'm selfish, I must improve and move that stuff out of the way. Having conscious contact with God with prayer and meditation brings me to a whole different level of place, the state of consciousness, which is one has complete knowledge of a situation or fact in front of me. I know what the fact is. I know what the problem is. I can tell. When it's me and I'm not in God consciousness, you got to explain it to me. Oh, that's a garbage can? Oh, you know what I mean? But praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. We're praying for information. This is 411 prayer. Like in your phone, 411 info. Not 911 God. This isn't a 911. Step 11 is not a 911 thing. God, help me get me out of this mess. That's what your 10 step is for. Praying to carry it out. Power to carry that out. Power. That's what they promised them in step 2, that one day we would have the power to get past our problems. So step 11 is this solid foundation that we need to stand on the rest of our lives. Daily spiritual practice. It works for me. I did for 60 days straight, and after I try it 3 or 4 times, like most people do, and then they go, oh, it doesn't work for me. Try it for 10 days, and then add another 10, another 10. Do it for 60 days straight. You get more God consciousness. And I have the opportunity to deepen that God consciousness through prayer meditation. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I felt alone my whole life up until, almost 22 years ago. In a few hours will be that. But because of that relationship, I never had my relationship with God I never had to feel alone again. Remember what 5th step promises says, we can be alone, perfect peace and ease. You can be alone and never be alone. If you feel like you're lonely and depressed and frustrated, go to God. You're not doing something right. We can only be by ourselves if I'm by myself. If I know I'm with God, and it's not, it's not a light switch I'm turning off and on. It's not pancakes I'm flipping. I'm not doing the 3rd step prayer every day. I'm reading it, but I'm not doing the 3rd step every day. I'm not flipping pancakes over. I'm not turning my will back. When I started step 11, it wasn't that difficult for me to improve my conscious contact with God through meditation and prayer, because I just did it. Basic stuff, and I grew into it. See, here's the thing, is relationship with God does not just happen. You have to put time into it. How do you get to know another person? How do I get to know, Manuel or Kick In? I spend time with them. I ask them questions. I get to know them. That's what we're doing in step 11. That's all we're doing. Like any good relationship, we want it to nurture, grow with it, expand it. But now we have a new attitude, a new relationship with God. So forget the old one. Don't even try to bring the old one into this. Spiritual principles, of commitment plays an important role in step 11. It's all about repetition. Think about eating, sleeping, getting dressed, going to the bathroom in the morning, whatever you have to do in the morning. What if you added prayer meditation as a way of life? Meditation has been my way of life for 22 years. It's not a bragging thing or anything like that. It's my safety net. Sure, I read books, I listen to recordings, I go to book studies, I do all this stuff, but it's something I do on my own. I developed. What happens when you make it a way of life? Love oozes out of you. That's the cool thing with 11. Even atheists can have conscious contact with God because they found love. That's what they call it, love. I've never met a real atheist in this program. Prayer meditations, it's a huge important part of the early people. The Oxford group, Dr. Bob and the good old timers on page 136, check out what he says. Receiving guidance and direction from God through the practice of quiet time from the heart was the heart of the Oxford group practices. I'm going to close this. I forgot what I got. Early morning quiet time is the heart of the Oxford group practices. Early AA members believed quiet time to be absolutely indispensable for staying sober. They members of that time did not consider meetings necessary to maintain sobriety. This is Dr. Bob talking, not me. They were they were simply desirable. Morning devotion, prayer meditation, however, was a must. He calls it a must. Now people will tell you, I don't know about prayer meditation. I tried it. The thing about it, it's part of the formula. You have to make it, even if you're not that good at it. Now people tell you the meditation is the must. The meetings are the must. Here's another part from Dr. Bob and Good Old Timers. Dr. Bob, 314, Dr. Bob and Good Old Timers. Bob's morning devotion consists of short prayer, 20-minute study of familiar verses from the Bible, and a quiet period of waiting time for directions. This came from the Oxford group, that which is principle 4, listening for God's guidance and carrying it out. And studying. So this is two-way prayer right here. This is but it was studying, prayer, listening for God's voice, and journalizing. I'm sure there's more into that. Kevin is the expert on this. Two-way prayer. But they believe that 10 fundamental points. So this is from Oxford Group pamphlet I'm going to read. 10 fundamental points of what we call step 11. God, or 10 fundamental points of God. God is alive. God knows. God will help. God can do anything. God is power. God is within. God is interested in you, always interested in you. God has a plan for you. God can answer for every need and problem you face. Anyone can be in touch with God. Look at that stuff. That's how it's not tricking your mind and believing God's alive, because you know it. Don't fight it. Because God knows, God will help, and God will do anything for you. Here's the conditions for meditation. Very simple conditions. Take time, be patient, be quiet, be still, relax, tune in, listen, be honest with every thought that comes, open your heart, write down everything that comes to mind. Now here's the don'ts. Don't say to yourself, this thought isn't important. This is just an ordinary thought. This can't be guidance. This can't be from God. This is just me thinking. Write down everything that passes to your mind. This is Oxford Group stuff right here. Names of people, things you do, things to say, things that, are wrong might come to mind. That sounds almost like step 10. We do that stuff though. Now here, this is the most important one for the Oxford Group, and this one really hits home. And there's not one person here that hasn't, including myself, hasn't messed up on this. If you're not receiving guidance and directions and not getting any definite words because we are still being blocked off from God in some way, it's always one of these or more. There's something I will not do. There is a wrong in my life I will not face. There's something I will not let go of, like resentment or fear. There's an amends I refuse to make. There is a habit I will not give up. There is a person I will not forgive. There's a wrong relationship in my life I will not give up. Ask yourself those questions seriously. It's from the Oxford group. When they say restitution, I say amends in there, but the same thing. There's something I will not do. And make these into questions. Is there something I will not do? Is there a wrong in my life I won't face? Is there something I will not let go of? Ask yourself, is there amends I will not make? Is there a habit I will not give up? Yes or no? Is there a person I will not forgive? Big question there. There's no recovery of being a victim. Is there a wrong relationship in my life I will not give up? You know, is there? One way I like to explain God to people is the word abiding. We are often, you know, it's an old school word, like abide the rules, obey the rules. And abide means obey. And it sounds very religious, but it runs way deeper than that. Because they always told me, you guys got to obey God. And it means to continue a particular condition, attitude, relationship without stopping. That's what abiding is. It's to obey the will, to follow the will. I don't want to say the word obey, follow, and live as one with God. Live one with God. It's not what you want anymore. It's what God wants. Now, Christianity likens abiding in God, and I love this. God is the grapevine, and we are the branches. The branches cannot bear fruit on their own. They must abide in the vine, in God. Abide in me, and I in you, is what it says. Buddhists say, abide to your true self, and rather than the ego, as in obey the word and not the ego. The Tao, which is my favorite, the Tao say, abide in peace that flows to you. Follow the peace that flows to you and bring it wherever you go. Don't be shy. Teach what needs to be taught. We are all on a spiritual quest to know God, and not knowing about God, not believing in God, knowing. A lot of people know about God, but how many can say they know God? Do you know God? You know, how did you, again, let's go back to kindergarten. How did you know how to ride a bike? Staring at a bicycle? You made conscious contact with the bicycle. You got on and rode it. And, you know, you got scraped up a few times along the way, but we didn't quit. We had to make conscious contact with the bike. You know God by making conscious contact with God. You can't avoid it. You know, it's indispensable. You cannot avoid it when you do the steps. People fight God when they have God. Like it's too cool. Or it's not cool. It says God could and would if he were sought. Remember that. Every person who has honestly tried to find that power, this is an endless adventure. And you hear me say this a lot in the coming weeks. We're hardwired to depend on God. We're not hardwired to depend on people or ourselves or anything else. It's in our program. God's in our program. And we are in this, when we're in the spiritual malady, we become, a block from God. We depend first on other people, then on ourselves, and it's a completely clusterfuck. And we wind up hurting people and resenting them. We need a new relationship with God, which nourishes our relationship with others. You remember the song "Rain on Me"? That's rain on me. words, it's through our relationship with God that we can truly have a relationship with other people. I did not know how to have a relationship with God. Taught me how to do that, to be kind, to be considerate, to pause, what do you want etched on your tombstone? Loving person or just your name? A person that helped, so many people. We need the institution that only God consciousness can bring us. And that institution is intuition. And it's precisely the sound. It's like an inner tutor. It takes us where we need to go. It blesses us and gives us the energy beyond what we can express. It's those inner messages. It's the gift of knowing, hearing, feeling, all those things, those senses, through spiritual senses now. So the sixth sense wraps around the other five senses. And I can truly use those to my advantage, right? In a good way. So take, let your intuition take you to spiritual roads that wow you. Let yourself be wowed. And don't question the wowness or the messages you get. Simply let God guide you. I remember when I was a kid and I was learning to water ski. And I kept falling flat in my face because I was letting the boat pull me. And my cousin goes, dude, let the boat. He goes, I'm sorry, I was pulling myself up so I would fall on the ground. I was putting my power into it. And my cousin goes, let the boat pull you up. And just all you got to do is let the boat take you. And I let the boat take me and it went everywhere. I let God take me. It took me everywhere I need to go. Let it take you to those in need of knowledge. And it will take you there, with the flow of life. Let it, and you will notice how life is effortless. So I'm going to close with a story. And this is a powerful story. So this is called Touch of the Master's Hand. It was a battered and scarred, and the auctioneer thought it was scarcely worth a while to waste time on this old broken violin. But the auctioneer held it up with a smile. Who will start the bidding? Good folks. 25 cents. 50 cents? $1? $2. Dollar going once, dollar going. Who will make it? 3? Anybody? $2? $3? Going once, going. Suddenly, from the back of the room, out of the shadows, this gray-haired man appeared. He came forward and he picked up the bow. He tightened the strings. He wiped off the dust off the violin. Tightening the loose strings, he played the most beautiful, sweet version of Amazing Grace as the angel sings. When the music ceased, the auctioneer voice was now soft and quiet and low, was stumped. But what he said was, what I bid now for this old violin. And he held it up with the bow. $1,000? Who will make it 2, 3, 4,000? 4,000 going once, going twice, sold. A person from the back angrily yells out, I don't quite understand this whole thing. What change is worth? Swift reply came from the front, the touch of the master's hand. Many a man whose life is once out of tune, battered and scarred with guilt and sin, is auctioned cheap to a thoughtless crowd. For like the old violin, he's going once, going twice, going almost gone. But the master comes and the foolish crowd never understands the worth of a soul and the change that's brought by the touch of the master's hand. Next week, we're going to get more into the touch of the master's hand over step 11.